Hello and welcome to Week in Review with me, Jane Secker. Kevin Maguire and Andrew Pearce are here to look back at the biggest stories of the last 7 days. What have been your top stories?
The glorious story of Jeremy Corbyn on a train, and when is a seat not a seat, and what a great fibber he's been found out to be.
I think the more serious story, the Italian earthquake and that huge loss of life. We think we're protected in Europe from natural disasters. Sadly, we're not.
Yeah, more on both of those stories in a second. But first, let's get a taste of what the week was all about. There were warnings about the dangers of the British seaside after several deaths over the last week, including 5 at Camber Sands in Sussex. Turkish tanks crossed the border into Syria to assist troops there in driving Islamic State out of the town of Jarablus. Britain's Olympic heroes returned home to selfies and celebrations after Team GB finished second overall in Rio.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Nigel Farage joined the road to the White House, speaking at a rally for Donald Trump. Former BHS boss Dominic Chappelle was banned from driving for 6 months for speeding. He asked not to be banned, saying he couldn't afford the cost of taxis. Scientists identified a new Earth-like planet which may have deep oceans. It's called Proxima b and could potentially support human life. A firefighter who was given a face transplant a year ago says he now feels like a normal guy. Patrick Hardison's face was burned whilst rescuing a woman in 2001.
I feel happy about my new hands.
And also making great progress is Zion Harvey, the youngest double hand transplant patient. The 9-year-old says his next challenge is to persuade his mum to let him play football. Bless, he looks to be doing really well, doesn't he?
Very
Well
lovely
done him.
little boy.
But the lovely pictures of the Team GB's homecoming. Quite a homecoming they had, didn't they?
Fantastic. Theresa May, funny that, she's agreed there will be a victory celebration after the Paralympics, and I think there's going to be 2, one in London, one in Manchester.
There is. I love it when a British team comes from abroad and they have something to declare at customs. We're going so used to footballers going abroad and coming back with nothing.
And the Chinese, of course, are still claiming they came second. They've just got to learn to be better losers, have they not?
The closing ceremony, what did you make of the Japanese leader's outfit? He came as Super Mario.
I thought it was fantastic. Super Mario is a cartoon character, very famous. You won't have a clue. I know. I know. You want to get out and about a bit more. But no,
I did wonder why he was dressed so stupidly. Now I know.
He's seen as a very stale steer in Japan, so that was a bit of style.
Not as good still, in my view, as Boris on the London bus waving the Union flag with the Spice Girls back in Beijing in 2008.
Yeah, who could beat that, indeed?
Quite.
OK.
Indeed.
Well, let's go now to Italy, where an earthquake has claimed the lives of more than 260 people. The quake struck in the early hours of Wednesday morning and devastated parts of Lazio, Umbria and Le Marche. Sky's Ian Woods has this report.
The firefighters had been carefully picking their way through the rubble of the crushed house for several hours. They believed there was someone trapped inside. But there were no signs of life, just remnants of how life had been before the quake struck. The same scene was being played out on another demolished building a few meters away. Eventually, they found what they were looking for. A body was gently removed and taken away on a stretcher. Within a few minutes, another victim was being brought from a neighbouring house. 2 more soon followed. Rescue and recovery work, which began in the early hours of the morning, would continue all night. Just when all hope of survival seemed to have gone, proof that the efforts of rescue workers had not been in vain.
A 10-year-old girl was just pulled out from the rubble and she is being taken to the hospital. That is good news. As far as the rest is concerned, the images speak for themselves. You can see what the town looks like.
Rise above the town and you can see the full extent of the destruction here. One estimate suggested 80% of the old town had been destroyed. Some of the buildings were up to 700 years old, but relatively modern homes were also flattened.
And this is the problem, isn't it, in this area, the age of the buildings, and after the L'Aquila quake, they said they needed to strengthen the buildings, but actually, when you look at those old buildings, you can't strengthen them. You'd have to knock them down and rebuild them.
It's all the more shocking, too, because it's where people go on holiday, and you don't expect it to happen on your doorstep in Europe. And we've all been to that part of the world. Fantastic. And a medieval convent destroyed. Terrible.
They look like pictures from war-torn Syria,
Yeah,
where there's been bombing and shelling. And we do, in Europe, we often think we're immune to these disasters. You read about them in Asia, you read about them in South America, but you don't really expect them in Europe. And they do happen, thankfully very rare. But Italy is a wealthy country, so they can rebuild, but you can't. People who had their lives ruined or killed.
But also, that's history. They can't rebuild that history.
And one of the towns, it was a pasta festival that weekend, and a lot of these villages, I went to Italy in the summer, a lot of these villages are deserted most of the time. Yeah. But when they have a festival, everyone's comes back to the village who's ever lived there.
I know. And of course, there's lots of holiday makers there too, which is why there are British people amongst the casualties.
Yeah, disaster movies show the ground opening up and people being swallowed. That's not how you die in an earthquake. You die when the building collapses, and it's in the middle of the night, you're in bed, very difficult to get out.
Indeed. Right, let's move on to our gaffe of the week now. Now, there were lots of nominations from you this week. Stephen McNamara suggests Owen Smith for using the word lunatic. Helen Ranger nominated France for their bikini ban. More on that in a moment. But first, if you were carrying out repairs on a wall containing a famous artwork, then you might want to be a bit more careful than this. This is, or perhaps more appropriately was, Banksy's Spy booth mural, which was painted on a house in Cheltenham, not far from GCHQ. That's what it is now. During repairs to the Grade 2 listed home, the artwork was destroyed. It had been given retrospective planning permission to protect it, but sadly it wasn't enough. An error, this really, wasn't it?
Disaster. I mean, because it's actually a very good Banksy, and GCHQ is, of course, the great spying listening post in Europe, and how could it have been such a fool and so stupid?
Well, the building company apparently says that they were trying to work down the building to very gently protect this, but the render just collapsed as they got closer.
It's gone. Maybe you can sell the bits as a jigsaw. I mean, it was thought to be worth about £1 million quid,
I mean,
but it has.
And it was a great tourist attraction. People flocked to see it, and the borough council are now in conversations with the owner.
Well, the art experts, the family that owned the house, were offered $650,000 for it a while ago, but since then it had been vandalised, and apparently, according to art experts, once they're vandalised, they lose their value. It may not have been worth as much as perhaps you might have hoped.
Well, not worth much now, is it?
It isn't, sadly. No, it's gone. Right. Don't forget to just keep sending us your nominations using the hashtag WINR. It's good to be able to include some of them this week. Also this week, perhaps it was another gaffe. Jeremy Corbyn, your favourite story, struggled to keep his campaign for party leadership on track following claims about a video claim in which he said he was sat on the floor of a train because it was too busy. Our senior political correspondent Robert Nisbet has this.
The incumbent in the leadership contest wanted Traingate moved into the sidings. He wasn't counting on the tenacity of Sky's Darren McCaffrey.
Just getting back to this train issue, I know it's not something...
Well, no, can we move on, please? It's discussing the NHS today. We're discussing the NHS. Can you have an NHS question, please? Can we have an NHS question?
We'll pause Mr Corbyn there and come back to the NHS in a minute, but first a brief recap. Here's Mr Corbyn walking past seemingly empty seats on the London to Newcastle Virgin train service 2 weeks ago, before sitting on the floor and filming this political point.
The reality is there's not enough trains. We need more of them.
Now back to today's explanation.
Let's get to the details of it. Yes, I did walk through the train. Yes, I did look for 2 empty seats together so I could sit down with my wife to talk to her.
And that, he said, was only possible after a train manager helped make space. But while his irritation is plain to see, it has given fuel to his argument in favour of rail nationalisation. And in another twist to this saga, Virgin Trains is now being investigated for alleged breach of the Data Protection Act by releasing images of Mr Corbyn from the onboard cameras. But the Labour leader would rather the estimated 640,000 eligible voters thought about the future of the National Health Service instead, ending private finance agreements and renationalising those parts of the service run by outside companies to put the state back in control.
Kevin, was this an error by Jeremy Corbyn, or was this justified to highlight the issues of rail nationalisation?
No, it was an error. Look, I'm on crowded trains all the time. He's found one that wasn't ram-packed, as he said.
How did he do that?
And he clearly walked past empty seats or seats that had been booked, which were free, which you can sit in. He should know that. I don't think he set out to deceive, but he's got to the end. It's crowded there. He sits down and then he begins talking on film. No, it's an error, an error. And when you can give the moral high ground to Richard Branson, because the biggest scandal is the privatisation of rails, it's soaring fares, it is general overcrowding, the fact that Branson uses tax havens and drapes himself in the Union flag. It is the fact that he's promised to give about, I think, £3 billion from the East Coast to the public purse. It probably never will. That was a line that was very successful for 6 years in the public sector, after twice collapsing in the private sector. I wish it was back. Corbyn has a very good popular case for rail nationalisation, but you don't cut the ground from under your feet. It's
a PR disaster for Corbyn, that's what it is, because this whole idea that I'm unspun, I do things differently, he lied, because there were seats, as Kevin says, he walked past them. You can get on those seats if they've got tickets there, people may be getting on the train later. He said he wanted to sit with his wife. The night before, his own office denied the suggestion he wanted to sit with his wife was a factor, so I think that's made up. And as Kevin said, I use the Southern Railway all the time. The trains are always delayed, always crowded.
Maybe
it's
just
so
picked the
easy.
wrong line,
yeah,
you know.
But also, Virgin Trains have 2 CCTV cameras in every single carriage, and they said they knew straight away there was something wrong with this story because the 11:30 and mid-morning trains are never full. So it was just idiotic from start to finish. And there's the old expression, you know, when you're in a hole, stop digging. And his performance at the press conference, tetchy, bad-tempered and rude. He knew that question was coming. He should have been ready with a joke and made light-hearted of it.
Staying very briefly with Labour, Kevin, Owen Smith this week criticised for using the word lunatic.
Yeah.
Again, you know, ill-advised. I mean, he says that he was using it in reference to himself.
No, he wasn't.
That's what he said. It didn't sound like that, but that's what he says. And both he and Jeremy Corbyn have spoken about the need to be careful about language and not make references around mental illness. We often do it. We all do it. I've done it in the past. It's careless talk.
You've done it about me.
It was an error. You've done it about me. It was an error. And actually, in a way, he damaged his own campaign because Corbyn was in trouble on rail, and then he created a diversion.
Yeah.
Indeed. OK, time for our quick quiz now. Can you tell me which Hollywood star could become a feature on your mantelpiece?
Oh, dear.
Got them stumped? You know at home? We'll find out after the break. Welcome back to Week in Review with me, Jane Secker. I'm joined by Kevin Maguire, Associate Editor of the Daily Mirror, and Andrew Pearce, Consultant Editor of the Daily Mail. Now, before the break, we asked which Hollywood star could become a feature of your mantelpiece.
Is it Kevin Bacon?
No.
You're just guessing at random. All right.
His picture was in the paper the other day.
Oh, there we are then. That's it.
He's advertising something. Truman Capote, because the ashes of the actor, writer and director, most famous for Breakfast at Tiffany's and Cold Blood, are going up for auction.
Who wants them?
Well, somebody does. They're expected to sell for anywhere between £3,000 and £5,000.
Really?
They had been in the possession of the wife
of the
TV host Johnny Carson.
Look at that hair.
But will now go up for sale in a month's time.
I'm not going to make a bid.
You're not going to make it.
No.
I wouldn't be making a bid either. I mean, do you think it's right that somebody's ashes are auctioned and passed on from person to person?
I'm a free marketeer. I believe said it. If there's a market for it, flog it.
Why would you want
it?
It's a bit bad taste, isn't it? But nevertheless, I mean, what do you do with it?
What does the money go to his estate,
I
presumably?
don't know, but, you know, I just sort of think it wouldn't be nicer if he was laid to rest, you know, passed around
scattered
from someone's mantelpiece. I suppose he's in the middle of all the parties, you know. If you have
You've got a lot of mantelpieces, haven't you? That's probably why he wouldn't go. If it came in 12s, he'd be all right. He could have
I don't know.
He could bookend every mantelpiece he's got.
What is he talking about?
Let's move on.
That mansion of yours.
This week, France debated the rights and wrongs of the burkini. In some reports, the garment's been banned, and the manner in which the ban is being enforced has provoked anger. Sky's Laura Bundock reports.
The ban on burkinis brings a bitter debate to the beaches of France. In this video, a woman in Nice is told by police she can't wear her burkini. "I've always worn it, though," she argues. And this image went viral. It appears to show a woman also in Nice ordered to change her outfit by armed officers. Many were outraged. And the ban has also caused confusion. This woman says she was fined at Cannes for wearing a headscarf. We've hidden her identity.
I'm horrified by what happened. I'm horrified by the behaviour of people around us. There were some people supporting us, but there were other people who applauded the police officers and who began insulting us, and we were shocked.
15 French resorts are now enforcing the ban, a move which some say is unjustified and discriminatory. But France has faced an unprecedented wave of terrorism, and with it growing fear. After the attack in Nice, several cities banned the burkini, arguing it defied the country's secular laws.
Do you think this is justified, the forced removal of women's clothes in public on any level?
It's horrible. And France is behaving worse than... I mean, I don't like the idea of a bikini and the niqab, but I defend women's rights to wear them, and I just think it's illiberal and terrible. And I can remember actually on a beach in Sydney with a great mate of mine, who's a journalist, an Australian journalist. She wore a bikini for one reason, to protect herself from the Australian sun. And nobody told her to take it off.
We quite rightly condemn regimes such as Saudi Arabia, which force women to cover up, and now you've got France forcing them to uncover. So it's Islamophobic. Let's be straight and honest about this, because if somebody went with a nice flowery dress, with long sleeves all the way down to the ankles, would they make them uncover? No. So if you want to go in a burkini, I mean, I think women should be free to uncover, but if they want to cover up, then let them cover up on a beach. You wouldn't make someone with a flowery dress take it off, so don't make someone take a bikini off.
It's a rare day when we get to agree on something.
But I don't like
Thank you
banning
very much.
Well, in Nice, and that truck attack, 30 of the people who died, 30 of the 84 were Muslims.
Well, the first one who died was a Muslim mum.
Yeah, but this is appalling by France. I quite admire their anti-secularism in general, but this is ridiculous.
Gone too far. Right, let's go on to your choice of paper stories of the week. Andrew, you're starting off with a warning about wind instruments, bagpipes in particular.
In particular, research has shown that actually, if you played bagpipes for many years, and we know people like Alistair Campbell played the bagpipes, the moisture that can collect inside the bagpipes and the pipes can turn into a very dangerous form of fungi and fungus, and it can actually kill you.
Yeah, the 61-year-old man who's died because of inhaling the mould and the scarring it's caused on his lungs.
So you've got to, if you do play the bagpipes, which I don't.
No, get away! Get away!
You're so full of hot air.
Thank you. Then you need to get them cleaned regularly. That's
Clean your pipes out.
And question is, do you know where bagpipes were invented, where they were first played?
I would have thought Scotland, but I'm sure you're going to prove me wrong.
Bulgaria. Right. And there's a statue to the first bagpipe player, and I've seen it.
If you took up the pipes, a lot of other people would give them up.
Kevin, your choice now. Why might complaining about your holiday flight cost you now?
It's outrageous. It's an alternative disputes system, they call it. Make a complaint. BA's part of it, EasyJet, Thomas Cook. You're going to have to pay 25 quid if your dispute isn't upheld. That's meant to deter you from complaining. Come on. All companies have to have ways of dealing with customers who feel aggrieved because they haven't got a service. You don't charge them. And these airlines are very, very profitable too.
But also, people are not very good at doing this, and a lot of people don't know that when your flight has been delayed by over 4 hours,
you're entitled to
quite a hefty sum of money, and a lot of people just don't bother claiming it anyway.
I know, and let's face it, the airlines they're like the trains; they're late all the time now, aren't they?
Well,
but you know what this is? It's all about deterring people, particularly people who haven't
British
got
people
a lot
don't
of cash.
complain much anyway because we don't.
No, mustn't grumble.
Yeah.
Andrew, your choice now. The chairman of Ofsted, he was forced to step down this week. He wasn't very kind about the Isle of Wight, was he?
He was appalling, actually. This is David Hoare, Hoare, spelt, who has been sacked by Justin Greening, the new Education Secretary, 3 weeks after he said where he has a holiday home in the Isle of Wight where they have had educational problems and Hampshire County Council have got involved in the schooling. But he effectively said it's like a ghetto and accused them of inbreeding. Really deeply offensive stuff, and he's got the push, and quite right too.
Do you think he was right, though, Kevin, to raise the issue of educational problems on the Isle of Wight? His point was people go there for their holidays, they don't know that there are actually some fundamental issues on the island, some problems with education.
And they are, because a lot of areas of the Isle of Wight are quite poor, and so you have problems around there. That's fair enough, raising them, but then don't go insulting people. And he was kind of that very rich holidaymaker going in, shouting at the locals. That's what he was doing, insulting them.
Barbara Streisand, who won the battle between her and Siri?
And what is Siri anyway?
Oh, God, blimey. Who's Super Mario and what is Siri? Anyway.
I've only heard of it this week.
Oh, God. Do you inhabit a cave somewhere?
No, I just don't
anyway,
know.
For those viewers who don't know, and Andrew, what is Siri,
Barbara
first of all?
It's a way of talking to your iPhone, and it answers questions.
Nobody talks to him,
isn't it?
you see.
And
He has to talk to his iPhone
didn't like
because
the
nobody else
way
speaks to
she
him.
didn't like the way her name was pronounced by Siri, so she rang up Tim Cook,
So
the head of
how
Apple,
was Siri pronouncing her name?
with a Streisand with a Z rather than Streisand, I think. Well, I haven't quite done it right. Yeah, with a second S.
Has she not got more important things to worry about?
And
with
they're going to change
£150
it.
million fortune.
Well, she's a diva, isn't she? That's clearly what it is. You try ringing Tim Cook about Apple getting your name wrong.
Yeah, the head of Apple.
Streisand.
She must have his mobile number. She gets straight through to him to get him to
seen
sort
her
it
in
out.
concert. She's a fantastic singer, but dear heart, get
I just
over
love
it.
the idea
Get over
that she is sitting there bored, playing with her phone, wondering how her phone pronounces her own name. That must be how she worked it out.
Yeah.
Very funny.
It's actually pathetic.
Well, anyway.
Apple phone. Who is the most famous singer in the world? with the first name of Barbara. You can imagine her doing it. Oh.
Right, thank you very much for taking us through your
Carole
papers.
King's
What
the
about
most
your
famous.
ups and downs? Andrew, we're starting with you, and you've chosen Sir Nils Olaf.
Oh, this is this sweet penguin at Edinburgh Zoo who's been promoted to the rank of brigadier. And he, quite why he's been promoted to the rank of brigadier, but he's a stalwart of the zoo and very popular. And he took part in a Guard of Honour procession this week to mark his promotion.
So he's been there since 72.
He has.
And
he's quite an old
gets
boy.
promoted. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, he's very sweet, but
He's used to this by now.
Picking up
don't you feel a bit sorry for him?
I like the fact that, well, I presumably they've stuck it on with something that doesn't harm the penguin.
Well,
They've stuck on the badge onto his wing.
Why are you sorry for this penguin? You can be in a zoo with fish morning and night, or you can be eaten by a polar bear in the Arctic. I mean, come on. I mean, it's
he looks completely
nice
baffled
life.
and bemused. I hope he doesn't
how can you tell? It looks bemused.
I don't know.
I hope he doesn't do anything as he's walking up the street.
Well, it all looks a bit fishy to me.
Oh,
Right, so we're sending the penguin up, but you're sending down, Andrew, Ryan Lochte.
What an idiot. This is the Olympic swimmer, gold medalist, who says he exaggerated his difficulties. And he didn't exaggerate, he lied, made up a story about the police.
He has apologised.
Very
and admitted
damaging
it now,
for the
but a bit
Brazil's
late.
image, yeah. And he's now lost a couple of £1 million worth of sponsorship, and I hope he loses all of it.
Yeah, he's lost Speedo, Ralph Lauren, and skincare range.
What he and his mates did caused real damage to Brazil, who didn't stage the best Olympics in the world, although we did brilliantly, of course. But he used his celebrity and thought he could get away with it.
How to sink your career.
Yeah.
And also it just gives this impression that all Americans are very arrogant, particularly in South America, where they used to organise coups.
Indeed. So we're sending Ryan Lochte down. Kevin, you are sending up a chap called David Render from Washington, Newtown, up in the northeast.
Yeah, sort of brown Sunderland. And he's been cleaning up his local community, picking up litter, cutting back brambles so footpaths can be walked on, restoring an old picnic table, a sculpture. And the council has sent a very heavy-handed letter accusing him of criminal damage and trespass.
Is it a Labour council?
There's past form between the two, because I believe he once dumped a bag of rubbish in the civic centre but nevertheless, he should be celebrated and encouraged to do this.
Yeah, he's trying to improve his local community. The council said that they're worried about branches and stuff that he's lopping down on highways, and he's worried that it could cause an accident.
So therefore,
he's doing their job for him.
So therefore, have a word and say, oh, it's fantastic what you're doing, but be careful.
We'll have a word and say, we'll come and help you the next time you do it.
Yeah. Well, that would be nice.
Well, we're sending him up. Good for him. But we are sending down the Flying Barn. Featured last week in Week in Review.
The curse of Week in Review.
It is the curse of the Week in Review going up. It's going down this week after crashing. Look at that. There we are.
Yeah.
30 million quid.
Fortunately, no fee-paying passengers on board.
So it was on its second test flight. No one was injured. They did damage the cockpit area, but nobody was injured in it.
Hurrah.
The giant bum, it's
there it is.
isn't it?
It's going
no,
down.
that's you. But no,
it has got quite a lot of padding, hasn't it? It went down very gently.
Yeah, but fortunately now they use helium, which is an inert gas. Of course, when the R101, that infamous British airship, was it 1930, 48, died, that was hydrogen, which is inflammable.
Yeah. What are you talking about?
It's
right,
facts,
so we're sending...
a bit of relevance, some knowledge.
The Airlander 10 down. Thank you very much for taking us through your ups and downs. And don't forget to send us your nominations using the hashtag WinR. Well, thank you very much for joining us for our review of the week. We'll be back with much more next week. But for now, it's goodbye from them.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.